Welcome back. You're watching Live Now from Fox, and we are taking a look outside of the United Center over in Chicago, Illinois, as we have everything you need to know ahead of the Democratic Convention happening starting this Monday. Thanks for being with us throughout this weekend and these past several days. I'm your host, Karal Lahara. As I mentioned, we are talking full-fledged DNC as that event is set to kick off in just a few hours from now. We do have also a live look inside of that center where many Democrats have ascended down to the city of Chicago. Vice President Kamala Harris anticipated to formally accept her presidential nomination from the Democrats this week. Harris, as we know, selecting Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate ahead of this 2024 presidential election. Let's get the full details on what we need to know ahead of this national convention from Fox News correspondent Jackie Heinrich.
The Democratic National Convention kicks off Monday in Chicago, where more than 4,000 delegates will convene to recognize Vice President Kamala Harris and her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, as the party's ticket after President Joe Biden dropped out of the race in July.
I think someone with her perspective and life experience being in the Oval Office is going to uplift the entire country.
Democrats have laid out the theme of the convention, for the people, for our future, and locked in former presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, former Secretary of State Hilary Clinton, and former First Lady Michelle Obama as speakers. DNC officials said Monday night will be more of a tribute to President Biden's legacy before he and the First Lady take the stage.
Monday night is considered on a convention Death Valley. It's Death Valley, because people aren't watching Monday night.
Harris and Walz are expected to further dive into their policies, including economic plans and their stance on reproductive rights, contrasting their ticket with former President Trump and his running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance.
The difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump is as wide as the Grand Canyon. Kamala Harris is about unity. Donald Trump is about division.
While the DNC is going on, the Trump team will be in a different battleground state every day next week. In Chicago, Jackie Heinrich, Fox News.
Thank you, of course, to Jackie Heinrich there for that report. On your screen here, you have a tweet from Brian Stelter via Axios. Here are the DNC's night-by-night themes, starting Monday with For the People. Biden and Dr. Joe Biden speak along with the former Secretary of State Hilary Clinton and a welcome from Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. Let's continue on this conversation ahead of the DNC. I'd like to bring into the program now Tom LoBianco, our friend here from 24/7 News. Tom, good to see you. I see you're in your car here. You're on your way to Chicago. So you will be there for this entire convention.
Yes.
But let's kind of start with this first day on Monday with Biden making that a keynote speech there. So maybe detail for our viewers what we can expect and what his remarks are going to focus on.
Well, I think you're going to hear a lot very similar to what we heard in his speech when he said the reason he was leaving. Okay. And a couple weeks ago. And the key thing to watch here is how much he focuses on fighting for democracy, the soul of the nation, things that were themes that were big in his time when he was running, but that Kamala Harris has really moved away from. And this is one of the things that I talked about in the latest 24/7 newsletter. There's been some very good analysis talking about how this is not the same race anymore. So this, in many ways, on Monday night is going to be a handoff from Biden to Harris. So be listening for a lot of the older themes from when Biden was still in the race. And that's part of the reason why they're having it on Monday and why they're, and then he's going to head out of town from there.
Pretty much like you're saying, a handoff there. That's why he's just going to start it, and then they'll take it away from there. Joe Biden here with this tweet on X saying this is one hell of a team, and of course a photo there with Harris and the governor, Tim Walz. Tom, the same themes that we see in the DNC are similar to what we saw in the RNC, which is a lot of unity when it comes to these particular parties. However, we do know that some delegates, they've had opposing views with certain things within the Biden-Harris administration, one of those being their stance on the war in Gaza. Do you think that that's going to be a topic of contention within this convention in at all?
Absolutely. I mean, look, there's going to be a lot of protesting going on in the streets around the convention. Chicago, I think the last I heard was folks are still preparing for somewhere between 30,000 to 40,000 protesters, which is massive. I mean, that is an incredible amount of people. However, it's really important to note here, will any of them be able to get inside? Will there be any screaming, any yelling, placards, protesting inside the convention hall? You know, back in 2016, I was going back through my old photos, my old Twitter from the last time we had an in-person Democratic convention. And back then, you did have a big protest inside the convention hall. That was back when Bernie Sanders released his delegates to Hilary Clinton, and they didn't want to be released. They did not like Hillary Clinton at all. A lot of them were very angry about it, and they staged a walkout in the middle of that Tuesday during the convention back in 2016. So I'm watching to see if anything of that nature happens inside the convention hall. And the thing to watch here too is, and especially with issues, is can it move the way that Democrats and especially now Harris-Walz talk about the war? You've seen her in a number of campaign rallies kind of beating back some of these limited protests that you've had where she says, I'm speaking, I hear you, but I'm speaking now. Will that force her and her team to readjust it all, to adjust how they talk about the war? Because as it stands right now, it doesn't look like we're any closer to a ceasefire, and this thing is raging around Israel.
That topic on how Harris kind of deals with these protesters is something that I have seen in the headlines recently from different political analysts. So interesting note to see how that's going to be addressed within the DNC. Let's move on and kind of bring in former President Trump and the Trump fans ticket to this conversation. So recent polls from some major outlets, including Fox News, the Washington Post, and the New York Times, they're showing either a tight race or Harris leading by a handful of points. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it's so the big one that we saw yesterday was the New York Times Siena poll, and they show her leading in a handful of the swing states in Arizona and North Carolina, Trump leading in Georgia and Nevada. And of course, the Trump campaign response to this has been to say, well, these polls are incorrect. They have a history of being skewed. J.D. Vance was on the Sunday shows today saying that, basically calling it fake polling. Now, I would note that earlier in the race, the New York Times and Siena poll was actually very bullish, or at least the numbers that they reported were very good for Trump and very bad for Biden. And you had Biden and his team saying, don't watch the polling. So this does seem to be a relatively good, small c conservative barometer of where things are. And of course, as we note throughout here, it's important to watch the state level polling that we're seeing as opposed to just the national poll. The national will give you a good sense of that overall trajectory of things, which continues to show Harris establishing a 2 or 3 point lead nationwide. But really it's in the states, and that's where we need to be watching right now.
Tom, let's continue on with more of these poll numbers. So we did have the RNC a few weeks ago. Did we see any changes when it comes to those polling numbers after the RNC for the Republicans? Can we expect some changes after the DNC for the Democrats?
There's a longtime source I talked to, Michael Cohen. He's written a great book on campaigning and campaign tech, and he's been a pollster for a number of firms over the years, including Purple Strategies, moderate Republican. We were talking about this, and we've talked about it repeatedly. It's hard to identify things that specifically move numbers because so much has happened in this race that it's really hard to isolate things. So if you look at what happened with the Republican convention coming out of that, and that was just a couple days after the assassination attempt against Donald Trump. And that had not settled in with the voters enough to where it could be successfully polled. And as a standalone issue, can you isolate this scientifically? And then what happens a couple days after the Republican convention? Biden steps out. And you look at all these things happening, it's a conflagration of, as we've noted many times on here, these major historic political moments in this campaign. It's very hard to pick out one thing or another really moving numbers. Now, a couple of other dynamics here, which I reported on in the newsletter earlier today. Heading into the convention, it's also a little bit different because conventions are used to jazz the base, to get people energized, to get the respective parties really excited going into that final leg of the White House race, going into after Labor Day. It's almost defeated heading into both conventions because you look at the level of enthusiasm from Republican voters going into and coming out of the Republican convention. It's strong and it's steady. And what happened with the Democrats here, of course, is that basically the Democrats got activated. And you see that they have a super high level of enthusiasm by Biden stepping out and Kamala Harris coming in, and then the Walz selection. So traditionally, God knows this is not a traditional campaign cycle, but traditionally you would see that and you would be able to identify these things. But again, things are so jumbled this time and quite amped up, really. So I don't know that either one end up getting a bounce after the conventions.
Wouldn't it just be so easy if we could predict what we would see after these conventions and get a clear stance, Tom? I mean, in a perfect world, right? We do know that we're going to have some competing events throughout this next week because Trump and Vance, they're still holding and campaigning throughout the U.S. What do you think is going to be their messaging as the DNC is ongoing?
Yeah, so the big issues that are really powerful for Republicans and really resonate with Republican voters and independents and swing voters that Trump and Vance need to win back to their side. Immigration and the economy. And this is part of the reason that you've seen the Harris campaign try to take it head on, and why you've also seen Trump and his team really hammer away at it. Now, it does seem that they're still kind of struggling with the messaging here in terms of how they handle it. Kamalanomics, calling it Comrade Kamala, Communist Kamala. But they do seem to be settling in on it. And the more important thing here is really focusing on those issues, hammering away at those issues going into it. So I suspect, I mean, look, there will be counter-programming from the Trump campaign at Trump Hotel in Chicago. And that's all fairly standard. The Democrats did the same thing with the Republicans in Milwaukee a couple of weeks ago. There will be a number of campaign appearances by Trump, by Vance, separately going different places, press events being held by the surrogates. I would look for a lot of hammering, not on the DEI and the race stuff. I mean, you saw that from Trump weeks ago at the NABJ, the National Association of Black Journalists. They seem to have moved off that, or at least the campaign has. But really, I would be watching and listening more for immigration and the economy. Those are the two strong suits for Trump and Vance right now.
All right, Tom, as I had mentioned before, I know that you are heading over to Chicago right now as we speak. So before you get back out on your way, any final thoughts?
Oh, I am really excited to go see the Mike Royko exhibit up at the Newberry Library in Chicago. And if you're listening here, you're clearly a politics junkie and you know exactly who Mike Royko is. One of the books that started me on this path to journalism many years ago, Boss. By Mike Royko about Richard J. Daley, and it is consummate political journalism. It is just amazing. It's incredible. So I personally am very excited to go pay homage to the master, Royko, and I'll be up there at the Newberry Library, in addition to so many other things in Chicago.
Of course. Well, I'm glad to know that you're also going to be enjoying the city and everything it has to offer, besides also being there for the DNC. Tom LoBianco from 24/7 News, we always appreciate your insight here at Live Now from Fox, and we look forward to speaking with you throughout this next week. Safe travels.
Thanks, Carl. See you.
See ya. We're going to step away for a quick commercial break here at Live Now from Fox, but we continue to track everything you need to know ahead of the DNC. A live look inside of that venue in Chicago, Illinois. We'll see you back here right after this.